is Gary Atensi with CNTV, and today we're in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I am here with Achievement Edge founder, Mark Adams. Let me ask you, Mark, since 2006, you have been a conflict resolution specialist. Let me ask you, how did you get involved in this type of industry?
I've always kind of found it where different people would come to me for different types of conflicts that they were having, or I would see it in different areas. And a lot of times it came to a situation where I recognized that people weren't really being able to understand each other. They were only working from within their frame of reference and only wanting to chastise the other person or point the finger. And being able to see the bigger picture, being able to help other people step back and say, do you understand where they're coming from, and help them be able to calm down enough to where they could get a better perspective, seemed to be something I had a knack for. But I worked within the school system, and I worked a lot of issues with the students and the staff and the faculty with helping them see some of those things, and it just became something I had a passion for. And then I got into the business side of it and started doing more with that. Really just wanted to spend most of my time doing it because I just had such a passion of teaching people better ways that they can communicate with each other.
Speaking of communication, this is not something that's just limited to the large corporations. I mean, every business out there deals with conflict, and so to move forward, this is something that is very necessary.
Definitely. In fact, you almost don't even have to turn on the TV to look around and see just the damage that gets caused by people not being able to communicate effectively. We only hear tidbits of information, and then people fly off the handle instead of being able to really explore and understand what's really going on here. Look at their biases, look at their judgments, and be able to say, what part of this conflict do I own? What am I maybe a part of? Maybe I don't want to address that type of issue because I want to point the finger at the other person. But being able to take some accountability and responsibility for both sides, and that way you have more respect for the conflict itself, and then can work to get a better resolution, hopefully.
Why do you feel this type of process is needed more today than ever before?
You have a lot of people that are the baby boomers that are now leaving, and so the good mentors that some of the newer generation might need, we're not really trained on how to have a conflict for the most part, and so we go back to our default on the people that are role models to us as we were growing up, on how we watch them conflict, and we think that might be the right way. But when we're in a corporate environment, those skills won't work, or they often, when they fail, we don't have anything to fall back on. So by learning some different skills and being able to learn even some of the better thinking abilities about how to address what's going on within me, my emotions, and being able to self-regulate ourselves, we can then return to that conflict much more effectively, and then hopefully be able to work with the other person instead of it just exploding.
What exactly is conflict coaching? What takes place there?
The way I look at it is, you might have an executive or somebody in a place where they're just having trouble with different people that they're working with, or they might have a problem that they're dealing with. It's not coming in to say, here, I'm going to solve the problem, but it's a series of questions that you work with them through on stages of, how are you approaching this, what can you be doing differently, and all geared in a conflict setting to where they can then see the issues that they're facing and be able to maybe ask themselves some hard questions that maybe they weren't wanting to answer, and so being able to identify more of what's really happening in the conflict and what ownership that they might need to take to be able to then come to the table and add more value to what's happening within the conflict, and ultimately come to hopefully better resolutions.
Speaking of coming to the table, how then does mediation differ from that?
I have a little bit of a different take on mediation. Even though I'm a mediator, my premise with that is to really try to get to people before they need mediation, because most of the time, in my experience, by the time people need mediation, there's a lot of bridges that have already been burned. People are already so upset with each other. And so I try to work to teach people more of these skills up front through the coaching and seminars and trainings, so they have a repertoire of skills to deal with these things. And then if they do need to have the mediation, then of course have a supportive environment where they can then air their issues out with somebody that can help them be somewhat neutral and be able to come to an agreement of some form. It's a process, it'll take some time to work through.
So the mediation is after the fact, kind of, whereas like a group facilitation, that's more of a proactive approach then.
Definitely. I'm much more of the proactive, because as I said, by the time people get into mediation, usually they are so frustrated and they have so many walls and barriers built up, and it's like armor and tanks, and they just want to go to war with the other person because part of their ego gets caught up in it, that I'm right, you're wrong, and I've got to win regardless what. And that's where looking at the conflict and setting it on the table and saying, let's work this together, we're on the same side, we both care about this issue, as opposed to I'm right, you're wrong, I got to prove you're wrong. And that's where I think mediation can be very helpful, to be able to get people to see we both care about this. That's why we're working toward this.
On your group facilitation, when you go in and do something like this, does this take place over lunch, an afternoon, or a couple days?
It can really be all of the above. It just depends on the needs of the individuals, and maybe if there's a atmosphere that's toxic workplace where a lot of things are really difficult, it's going to take a little bit more time, and you have to maybe come back after. A lot of times some of the people that do some of the facilitations and workshops, they kind of cut and run. It was a one-time thing. People are kind of jazzed and excited, and then they never hear from the person again. They go back to their regular work schedules, and they fall back into their old behaviors. To where if you have a facilitation and then it's followed up with either through coaching or more training or another facilitation, to say, okay, we came together a month ago, now we're going to reconvene and talk about some of these things that might have came up, and as supports to say, here's what's working. As with anything, we got to practice it. You might learn a new skill and think, well, I know that, but if you're not really putting it into practice, you don't really know it.
Talking about getting down and dirty and actually doing some workshop type of modalities. Workshop versus seminars, tell me about that.
Workshop is going to be more participative, where people are getting involved and doing some things more like the facilitations. A seminar would be more of the leading through a set amount of material that I wanted to cover. Still participative, but with a workshop where maybe it can be going in the direction of the needs of the clients with what may be an issue for them.
Folks, if you take a look at the bottom of the screen right there, you're going to see his website. That's Achievement Edge. It's leadership resources and training solutions. Mark Adams has a great background to bring some great education to the table, as well as conflict management, mediation, something that every business out there deals with every single day. Not all conflict is bad then, because we can really get some breakthroughs.
Absolutely. Conflict is something that in our culture is shunned and people want to push it away. And I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things with conflict is sometimes if we're agreeing just to get along versus, like we all have heard of the Enron stories, everybody's getting along. Instead, what we need is somebody to be courageous enough sometimes as a team member to say, wait a minute, we need to talk about this. This is a real conflict. These are real issues we need to bring up. It might be uncomfortable, but we have to be able to be strong enough individually and as a team to face those brutal facts and truths. Most people want to just sweep under the rug, and if we continue to do that, it'll turn into a maelstrom or explode in our face.
And for somebody out there, a business is asking themselves, why would I bring in an outside person compared to maybe using somebody who I have inside?
Pretty predominant in a lot of places, because the HR people have, there's very good skills within there. However, that can be used in conjunction with what I do. Having somebody from the outside, first of all, you're going to have a fresh outlook and a perspective that the HR people or whoever might be doing some of the training can use in conjunction with what I've provided. And as I said, some people will click with somebody else, and there might be some different things that I bring up, because I'm a little bit more direct. With Otto Scharmer talks about having the theory U, which is the deeper your understanding is, the better you can get to coming to a deeper understanding, versus having just a surface level, you kind of understand it, but you don't really, you're not going to really be able to get to the better solutions. So getting everybody on board to have a deeper understanding of what's really going on and why, then everybody can then understand it and then move forward with hopefully better solutions.
Interesting, and obviously the solutions are what's going to make you successful out there in the business world, but quite honestly, it's not limited to business world. We're talking about conflict for individuals.
It is a need everywhere, and the book that I've been working on has actually got so big I've divided it into 2 books. There's so many things out there about how I got to do this to get this person to do, and instead it's so much about learning what I need to do different, what do I need to understand, what am I missing. And I think no matter what setting you're in, if you can learn those skills and practice them and work on them, you can be better all around in whatever you do.
Resolution is needed, conflict is out there. Folks, if you take a look, the contact information is at the bottom of the screen right there. His website is available, and you're basically going to find the Achievement Edge is available for you. Give him a call. He'll walk you through the steps. You can also see on the website there a lot of the services they offer, seminars, workshops, everything, that a full line of tools that they're able to use.
Yes, it isn't just necessarily predominantly conflict, because when you look at it, it's leaders are usually the ones that people rely upon to be able to resolve the conflict. And so it's developing yourself and then supporting your leaders. Managers so often are saying that they're so busy dealing with putting out the fires, and if you can give the people the tools to be able to resolve some of their own issues, it frees up the time for the manager or the leader to be able to work on what they should be working on. And then the people in the lower positions can then feel a little bit more empowered that, hey, we were able to resolve this ourselves because we had some better tools instead of waiting for things to explode and doing the damage control.
So true leadership resources. And give Mark Adams a call. He's been doing this for some time. He would love to come into your group, walk you through the steps, and this is something that leaders need everywhere.
Leadership is something that it's very difficult, because a lot of people want to aspire to it thinking that it's such a glamorous thing, but it is hard work. And to have that as a repertoire to be able to deal with it. And most people look at a leader as saying, go out forward and charge, when instead, sometimes they're the ones in the back trying to work through some of the issues and motivate and inspire some of the other people. And so learning how to better deal with some of the conflicts as they arrive, and they can be small, you don't even necessarily have to call them conflicts. They might just be disagreements presupposed going into a conflict. So if you can deal with those early on and teach and mentor the other people around you how to deal with those early on, everybody's level rises to a new place, and everybody's more effective.
Effective it is. That is the Achievement Edge. This is Gary Atencia with CNTV. And if you don't know, now you know.